Because I'm sure my mom learned it from somewhere as well. From my grandma, maybe my grandpa, my aunts, my great aunts. She learned it from somewhere. And I broke that. I broke that cycle that I don't have to kill my own life. I don't have to shut down when something tragic happens. Welcome to another episode of Mindset Mastery. I'm your host, Araujo. And today I'm going to talk about a few things that have been going on around the brokerage, around our lives in general, right? Which is the difficulties, the hardships, and the tragedies that occur on a consistent basis. Now, I'm hoping, and I'm praying that what I'm going to talk about today comes out in a way where it serves you, where it serves someone within your family, or just, makes you think about what we have to deal with as human beings. Now, before I start, I want to take a moment and remind you that I think a lot of you are here, or most of you are here, because we're trying to build a greater skill set, right? A greater mindset of how to deal with the difficulties, the hardships, and the tragedies that we will inevitably face. Like, life is not always easy. Life is not something that goes without any problems, without any issues. There's always something to overcome. And, as I started growing my brokerage, as I started growing myself and realizing that I just need to be a more powerful human being, I realized that there are certain skill sets and certain mindsets that I have to make sure that I'm able to develop on a consistent basis, because it is inevitable. I will face these difficulties. It is inevitable. I will face hardships and tragedies. And it could come in different forms. It could come in a way of death in the family. It can come in the way of health. It can come in the way of injury, financial problems, relationship problems, right? Divorce or issues that come up with our kids or our close family. These are things that can completely be it could stagger us from creating something great in our lives. It can create something that's completely opposite of what we want if we're not closely watching what we want to do and how do we handle these issues. And I'm in a position where, I am dealing with a lot of people, a lot of lives, with nearly 200 agents. I hear a lot of stories, and a lot of you don't know this, but I'm involved, just like I'm involved with a lot of your lives, right? And I get these phone calls that are very sad sometimes and very tragic. And I don't get to, and it's not the type of thing where I discuss openly with everyone about how hard it is to hear that. And sometimes I just sit back, and all I can do is just sit back and witness on how everyone responds to those tragedies, how people respond to those hardships. And my hope is that they've learned enough, that they've grown enough to make sure that they don't respond to it how most people would respond to certain issues, which is to go all the way back and revert back to their old habits, to revert back to their old ways, right? My hope is that they have the enough conditioning to understand that it is our duty to go through these tragedies powerfully, to go through it strong. Yes, we're all going to hurt. When there is a death in the family, when there's a health issue, when there's an accident, when there's injury, it can play a mental toll, a heavy toll on us. And, we seem to always revert back to our lowest form of habit. And when you struggle with something now, and when a tragedy hits, it is magnified. So if you struggle with depression, when a tragedy hits, you will suffer greater through that process. You will suffer greater depression and anxiety. And if your marriage is on the rocks already, it will be even more difficult when there is something that completely knocks you off your game. When the struggle is finances, you will find yourself even in a greater financial struggle. And if you're dealing with alcohol, right, where alcohol is sometimes the vice, or food is the vice of choice, when we have to deal with these tragedies or these hardships, it becomes magnified. People become more unhealthy, more sad, more depressed. And these are the things that we have to watch out for. Understand that what we do here with the 12-week target book is a way of conditioning ourselves to be strong during these processes. Because I went through this process alone. I've been able to be there for my family as we lost, loved ones during the last 12 months. Having to witness my dad lose his brother, my uncle, was difficult. Watching his pain, watching his way of dealing with it, his regret, right? The regret of not spending enough time, his regret of not being there as the way he wished he could have. Having to deal with my mom losing my grandma, right? Having to deal with Carla losing her dad. Like, these are all difficult things to witness, and these are all difficult things to experience as well, right? And I know that my conditioning process has allowed me to be strong, to be a shoulder to lean on, right? And I've also seen individuals go completely on the opposite direction, where things just got completely worse. They didn't build a standard for themselves on how they should operate and understand that there's other people still there for you and watching you and depending on you. I've seen individuals get so sad and then angry and start blaming others for what happened. Start blaming their own family members, start blaming others. In fact, I've been blamed, right? Where one of our agents blamed me for not following up enough when her dad passed. And I get it. That's how people deal with certain things, right? They don't know how to cope with certain aspects of their life not going the way they wanted. And I understand that. I couldn't explain, hey, I wish I would have called you more. There's no explaining. If this is where the blame wanted to lie, then that's where it needs to be. My job is to understand that is a defense mechanism. That is a way they're coping with it. And if I'm the scapegoat, then so be it. What's wrong with that, right? What's the bad part about that is when we put all our experiences under one situation, right? If you ever lost anyone, it's like regretting that you didn't spend enough time, or the last words you said to them, or the last conversation and how it went, or how you guys weren't on the same page. If we put all our experience based on that one experience, then it's going to eat at us our entire lives. We forget about all the great things that have occurred. And in this situation, when I got the blame for not following up enough, she forgot every conversation we had up to that point. She forgot every conversation that we had, and that's okay. I don't blame her. But our job is to understand that, this is difficulties and hardships are something that is part of our lives. And we have to understand that it is our duty to continue to remain strong. I've seen families completely dissipate. I've seen families disband. I've seen financial issues become worse, where loss of home now is another issue that they're facing. Health problems now become an issue that they're facing because things got worse. And like I said, if we don't have a way to have a standard, right? A standard for how we respond on a daily basis, things get worse. If you're struggling with your health right now, if a tragedy hits, it's only going to get worse. If you're having financial issues now, they're only going to get worse when something rocks you. And our job is to continue to do the right things every single day so that we have a fighting chance. Understand that, a fighting chance to be able to overcome these obstacles, these tragedies, these hardships. Yes, we are all going to feel the pain. We're all going to feel depressed. We're all going to fear all those things. But it's what we do during that time to remain strong, because we have family. We have others that are depending on us. My default mechanism was to do the same things. And I was just talking to my mom right now about how she dealt with her deep depression that affected all of us. I mean, growing up as a kid and seeing somebody shut down is difficult. It's extremely difficult. And we're in that position right now that if you shut down, it has ramifications that go way beyond you, that can last decades, that leaves voids upon our children and our family and our marriages. Understand that when we face these tragedies, it's not just on us. It's on everyone around us. And sometimes we're so focused on that one thing that we forget that it's a lasting effect. That even to this point, I'm like choking up a bit, right? When I think about what I had to experience and what my dad had to experience and what my siblings had to experience, when my own mom shut down because of the difficulties she had to face. She didn't have a conditioning process to understand that life is about overcoming these difficulties and these tragedies, and to develop the coping mechanisms to pass on to your kids. She did not understand that. And some of us right now do not understand that. So we wallow in our own sorrow day after day, week after week, not realizing is disabling the next generation. It's completely obliterating the success of our businesses. And it's a battle that we must overcome. It's not meant for us to shut down. And it is our job to condition ourselves not to shut down, not to go to our default modes. I remember I was like, when I tore both of my tendons, and then a few weeks later I tore my bicep, and I had little use of my arms, and I really was afraid, and Carla was afraid that I was going to go to my default of going into a deep depression, shutting myself down, not wanting to get out of bed. Like that was my default because I learned that. I learned that coping mechanism from my mom. What you're doing right now has a lasting effect. And I remember as I'm laying there, right, taking pain medication, limiting myself, because I also understand that, being hooked on pain medication after my surgeries. So having to deal with my own mental battles, my own mental anguish, wishing things weren't the way they were. And did I have my depressed moments? Yes, but they were exactly that, just moments. I did not allow it to get beyond that. Because for years, I've been conditioning my mind. I've been conditioning my health physically, emotionally, and mentally. I've been conditioning all those aspects over the years. And this was a test. That's the way I saw it. This was a test if I was going to default to the things I learned early on. And I refused. I refused to default. I refused to cope with things the way my mom did, the way I used to do it. So every day I did the things that got me into power. During that time, I remember I listened to sermons daily. I read something positive. I appreciated the things that I had. Even though I couldn't use my arms, I appreciated that I was alive to feel the pains, to feel the anguish. Everything that I would forget before. When I was just caught up on, I wish this didn't happen to me. And it was a test. And I remember thinking to myself, I can't believe I broke that cycle. I can't believe I broke the generational dysfunction. Because I'm sure my mom learned it from somewhere as well. From my grandma. Maybe my grandpa, my aunts, my great aunts. She learned it from somewhere. And I broke that. I broke that cycle that I don't have to kill my own life. I don't have to shut down when something tragic happens. I don't have to revert to alcohol. To my own thoughts, depression. And these are the things that are going to help you grow and prosper exponentially, understanding that it is our job to break these cycles. How to deal with hardship is a skill set. It's a conditioning process. We can't revert back to our default mechanisms, our default ways to cope with this. And understand, again, we have to remain strong in the things we do on a daily basis. And here we thought, right, it was just a real estate company, but really it's about building a better human being so we can cope with these things, overcome. It's not that you need a better business, you need to become a better business owner. And the way to do that is to be able to overcome these difficulties, whether they be financial, whether they be, health-wise, death in the family. Many times I just sit back and I have to witness. There's nothing more I can say to those individuals that are here. We lost one of our very own just recently. And I met with him right before he passed, Omar Vasquez. Rest in peace, my brother. And the same smile he would always have every time I encountered him is the same smile he greeted me when I went to visit him at his house. And we had a good conversation. Lil Vasquez Jr. was there and his wife. Vasquez Jr. is also one of our agents here. And he was at peace. He was at peace. And he assured his son and his family that, hey, I don't want you to shut down with me. I don't want you to die along with me. I worked too hard for you to shut down now. I want you to continue to grow and prosper and honor me through your growth and prosperity. Not to be hung up on the last moments of regret, thinking that you didn't spend enough time with me. And those are the memories that I now have of him. It's that big smile, the smile of appreciation. None of us know when our time will come, when our family members' time will come. But what a shame to shut ourselves down for everything that they live through, right? I don't think anyone wants us to shut down. And this is a conversation I constantly have with my daughters. Constantly. They have the phone number of our attorney. They have a copy of our trust. And I tell them, and I remind them that if we were to pass, if I were to die, I don't want them to die along with me. It is a part of life. And don't be hung up on the last moments of our lives. Don't be hung up on that. On the time you could have spent with us. Feeling the guilt that you could have said something different. Because that kills all the memories you had during our entire lives together. So don't get hung up. And I think we have to remind ourselves that we can't afford to get hung up on how things were in the last meetings, the last conversations. We're killing all the other memories. All the memories that we had, all the good times are now on one situation. Like our agent. She was angry. And it's not my part to say, remember all these other conversations we had. And we have to honor others by honoring ourselves. We have to honor others by honoring ourselves. We must take care of ourselves. And there's the only way to go through difficult times and to get through it is strong. But we have to condition ourselves to be there. Mentally, physically, and emotionally. Everything we preach here at A's and Associates, everything that we are. The business aspect of it is simple. Overcoming the financial woes, overcoming the injuries, the health problems, accidents, death. That's the hard part. Business is easy. That's the hard part. So we must condition ourselves to overcome that. And remember, it's like creating the good habits is what's going to help us get through this much stronger. And we realize, hey, there's somebody else watching, which is our family, our friends. And we have to be strong for not only ourselves, but for others. So I hope that this message was received very much what's in my heart. And, at the end of the day, we are human. We're always going to have regret. If we knew that our actions or inactions were going to cause some grief, we would never feel frustrated. We would never feel angry. We would never shut down because we know that life is too precious. But we're human. We forget. And we have to forgive as well. Forgive ourselves for not always being there, but we know how to get there, guys. We know how to build great bonds. We know how to build great strength, health, mentally, emotionally, physically. We know that. And it's our job to do that daily. And yes, we'll never be perfect when somebody does pass. We'll never be perfect when there's an injury that ensues. But because I was strong, I was able to overcome. Because Carla was strong, she was able to overcome and prosper afterwards and honor her dad. So let's not forget, personal responsibility is the first and foremost action we must always take. Everything else we'll be able to deal with it. Guys, I want to thank you for joining me for this episode of Mindset Mastery, and I will talk to you soon. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Badass Agents Podcast, brought to you by AZ & Associates and Do the Work Coaching and Consulting. You can watch this and other episodes by subscribing to our channel on YouTube or by visiting us directly at badassagents.com. And of course, you can listen to this episode and many others on your preferred podcast provider.